Okay. Welcome back, everybody. Thanks for tuning in as we continue with these 1 pound pieces. I really appreciate you guys sending all your comments and things you wish to make. So we're going to be making more stuff. So today we're going to make a sushi plate. These were made by a group of Girl Scouts that came in not too long ago. Aren't they super cute? So you see you can decorate them in different ways. You can go just about anywhere. So this is going to be, I guess, a rectangle style plate today. Cute stamp work. And that was a super fun little class. So, oops, sorry about that. So we'll just kind of put this to the side. Let's just stamp some of these here in the studio. So we're going to continue working on the Columbine clay today with our 1 pounder clay. Let's get our 1 pounder clay. Yay! Be sure to always wrap up your clay. Because again, we do live in New Mexico and we are a high altitude arid desert. And so we don't want the clay to dehydrate and we want to keep it workable as long as possible. So it's already in this perfect workable format. So this is the piece of clay that we're going to use today. So first we're going to use a nice open and relaxed hand to start compressing the clay and round off the clay. We want to make a sphere or a ball shape. That's what we're going for, and as long as you keep the ball moving around, it's going to be spherical. So we want to try to make this as round or as spherical as possible with open and relaxed hands. When you're working with your clay, you never want to use, again, the gouging type force, because this will create those air pockets and your piece will explode. You don't want to use bludgeoning type force, because again, that will create those air pockets and it will explode. And also clay is a medium that doesn't really like large discrepancies, so this thick to thin spot, the clay will remember that and it will more likely crack, warp, and fissure in the kiln. Even if it doesn't break in the first firing, it may break in the second firing. So again, no bludgeoning force, that's a bad thing. No gouging forces, but just an open and relaxed hand. And we want to compress the clay. We're getting introduced to the clay, seeing how wet it is, feeling how compressed the clay is, because we're constantly wanting to make this a nice, dense, and strong clay body. You can roll it on the table. It rolls according to your dominant hand. You can also clap your clay, and your clay will spin according to your dominant hand. But I like this one in the air. As long as you keep the ball or sphere moving, should be good. And this is always also a fun time to start going over geometry with kids, math and science, the chemistries. There's lots of ways to involve math and science and different cultural studies through the arts and even language, I believe. So we're making nice, strong, compressed, dense, strong clay body. And again, open and relaxed palm. So now we're going to take our clay, our nice ball of clay. You notice the tabletop that I'm working on is covered in canvas, and that makes it for a nice absorption. But you can work on newspaper at home or outside. It's pretty nice out today, Albuquerque, so working outside might be nice. So go ahead, we're going to take our ball and we're going to just kind of give it a nice light toss on the table. So you're going to notice that we've so far compressed to one side of the clay. So whichever direction you compress or stretch your clay in, that's the direction it's going to shrink the most in. So we always want to do it evenly on both sides. So you notice this one side has been compressed, the gravity side that works against the table, and you also want to do the same thing to the side that's exposed to the atmosphere. So now we're going to take our clay and we're going to turn that quarter turn, and we're going to pick it up with the fullness of our hands, and we're going to slam it down. And it's okay if it ends up being a little misshapen. It happens. We're going to do the same thing again. We're going to turn it that quarter turn. Pick it up with the fullness of our hands. Slam it down. We never want to pick up the clay with our fingertips like it's a piece of paper. This again causes that thin to thick spot, and the clay will remember that. And this is more important when you go into the larger pieces. But you want to get out of this habit of picking up things with your fingers. So picking up the clay, slam it down. Now we're going to just lightly slap the clay. A lot of people enjoy this. In my lessons, people tend to really enjoy this part. They can go hard as fast as they want. And the The thing I'm aiming for is where it's the thickest, because I want the clay to be as an even thickness throughout this whole process as possible, again, to prevent those crack warps and fissures. So again, we're going to turn that quarter turn, and we're going to slam it down. And you can stop the clay some more. Stop, 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 stop. Again, I'm aiming where it's thick, trying to ensure that I have a nice even thickness, so avoiding the edges or the perimeter of the clay. Those edges or the perimeter of the clay tends to be a little bit thinner than the center. So I'm aiming where it's a little bit thicker. And again, pick up the clay with the fullness of your hand, turn it that quarter turn in front, and you can slap it some more. Okay, so I already see this is nice. We have a little air pocket. So anything that looks like a blister or a burr or a pimple, that's a potential air pocket. So you just want to prick it with a little skewer to let the gas or air escape from that air pocket. And then just kind of smooth it down. Squeeze it out. Make it press that little weak spot. Yay! So now we're going to take our rolling pin. We're going to start with our 3/8 inch dowels. You can get these dowels at Home Depot, but again, you can use any pieces of wood, like 2 rulers, as long as they're the same thickness. These dowels will act like a bumper when we roll out our clay. So we have, again, a nice even thickness. Now, when we roll the clay, we want to roll fingertips past the wrists. We don't want to do these short, choppy motions like people like to do with the baking, because again, that causes that thick to thin spot, and your pieces are more likely to crack, warp, fissure. And then we're going to do the same thing. So again, we're going to pick up the clay with the fullness of our hand, and we turn it that quarter turn, and we flip it over. Now, the reason why we're turning it the quarter turn is because we want to stretch the clay evenly out in every single direction possible. And that even includes this to the atmosphere and to the ground parts as well. Because whichever direction you stretch your clay out the most in, that's the direction it's going to shrink the most in. So we want it to evenly shrink in the kiln. Fingertips past the wrists. And once your clay is no longer expanding or growing, that means it's at that thickness. So we're going to move to our 1/4 inch dowels. Again, flip and turn. Stretch the clay out evenly. So 1/4, fingertips past the wrists. And we're almost getting to the shape of the glutes. And do the fingertips past the wrists. And let's do one more. So now I want to kind of start keeping in mind the shape I want to roll out to. I'm going to use a hump mold, slump mold, simple former. If you have any kind of form that you enjoy at home, you're welcome to use them. I picked these up again at those the secondhand stores. I just love upcycling stores and secondhand stores. I don't really like plastic in my normal life, but when I find these nice sets of dishes like this, they're just such great molds, or hump molds, or simple formers, or in the Navajo traditions, sometimes they're referred to as pukis. So we're going to use this as our mold today, this nice little plate that I have. And I'm not quite there yet, so I want to keep in mind I want it just a little bit longer, just because I am doing that longer sushi plate today. Moving down to the skewers, because again, I like this to be a little bit thinner. It's a little bit thick at the 1/4 inch side, so I just want it a little bit thinner. Give it a nice little stretch in the one direction, and then I'm going to do the remainder of the stretch in this vertical. Let's do one more. You notice when I'm flipping and turning the clay, it doesn't really leave the table. The mass is kind of always being supported by the table, especially once I start going larger. You need a way to support the mass of the clay with the surface area being so large at this point. So using my hand, using the table, so that way again there'll be less stress on the clay and have less of those cracks, warps, and fissures. I find a lot of people complain a lot about slab work cracking, and again that's just because you're mishandling your slabs. But again, with anything it comes to time and practice. So I'm going to use my little hot mold, slump mold, simple former today, Pookie. I'm going to use a little skewer. You can pick these up when you're going out for your essentials at the grocery store. Yeah, so you can see everything we're using today you can probably find in your home and use that. So I have my clay rolled out, my slab. I'm going to use my skewer. Now this form here is a non-porous surface. So that means the clay will tend to stick to it. So I don't want to add too much pressure to the plate where I squeeze it down into the clay, because that will cause our slab form to stick to the clay. and it may rip or tear as we get it off. So I just add enough pressure to the sides of the form, so that way the form doesn't move around or slip around on the clay. Take our little extras and we'll just put those inside for now, and then lift up your form very gently, softly. Very nice. So now you're going to notice on your clay, or on your formed clay now, your formed slab. So we distributed the mats of the clay, that's the slab. We made a slab as opposed to a coil or a pinch pot or something on the wheel. And so now we want to clean up all of these burrs. Anything that looks like a crumb or a burr will become super razor sharp in the kiln once the glaze melts on it. So you can just run your fingers very gently, very softly, again, around the edge or perimeter, around the whole perimeter of your piece. You want to be careful of not pressing down too much, because you don't want to create this kind of sharp angle, but instead we're rounding off this 90-degree edge. When you cut your slab, I like to think of, I created two 90-degree edges on the top, the one exposed to the atmosphere and the one on the table. So we kind of want to retain that definition, but also round off those corners or edges. And we use no water. Super important with the clay to not focus on your imperfections, and do not focus on your mistakes, because you'll just highlight them and make them worse. But instead, just keep going and just take the knowledge you learned from the previous piece into the next piece, and you will get better. But again, don't judge yourself, don't be mean to yourself. Just keep trying and you'll make something good. So very lightly, without obscuring the edge of my piece. Clay, again, is one of those mediums that like to be handled as little as possible, because sometimes when you do too much, it just ruins the piece. So I'm doing the same thing to this edge. I'm rounding off this edge, compressing this edge, because the edge has in a way been aerated through the cut. So we want to again compress that edge, make it a nice strong lip, because we want to use this plate, so it needs to be able to take a good beating. And that's another reason why we want the rounded corners. Ceramics is basically a glassy, shiny rock, good for 10,000 years if you take care of it. And so it likes round shapes, just like bubbles are round. They like to be in sphere shapes because they're some of the strongest shapes in the universe, rounds and spheres. And so that when you're using your plate, or if you drop it in the sink, the roundness of the piece will help to disperse that energy away from the impact from the plate itself. If you have any sort of sharp edges, hard angles like 45s or 90 degrees, 45s, that is a good place where your piece will most likely chip or break. And then more connections as well. So I'm gonna again continue using my form here, and I have some little strips of newspaper because I can't put this clay directly into this plastic form because it may stick, and I don't want to risk that. So I do like having something in between. You can stamp your pieces before or after, so I'm going to stamp it now since I forgot. Let's see. What do I want to do? This is cute. Just do this, maybe. It doesn't really matter. Anything that has a textural quality, you can use that to imprint into your clay. Just super fun. You can use pull napkin rings, doilies, patina stamps. It doesn't matter. Nothing really matters. You do whatever you want. Stamped. Yay, that came out cute. I like keeping it simple. You can put design all over this, but I like simple things. And in the beginning, I think it's best to keep your design simple because it's so important to just go through the form multiple times because you just don't know what you really like, and there's so much to learn with every piece. So you always take that knowledge into the next piece of what you like better or what you want to do differently. And then you let it go. You don't hold on to it. Yay, my little studio stamp for the year, little year of the rat stamp. This one, cute. So now I have my slab. So I'm going to use my paper here. Let's scoot over a bit so you guys can see a little bit better. So I have my form, my hot mold, slump mold, simple former. I love this. these kinds of forms where I can use it either on the back side or the inside. So anything like that, but you can use any form really, any interesting shape that you have at home. Let's do a long piece here, maybe pieces here. You can use a full sheet of newspaper if you wish, but sometimes these strips are nice, they crinkle less on the back. So again, I'm supporting the mass of the clay throughout the whole surface area as much as I can. Very gently place into your form. What's nice about the paper is you can kind of move it around, touching the edges, making sure it's all lined up. And then I'm going to just start very gently, gently moving the clay into the form. I don't want to think too much of pushing into the clay because that will cause a weak spot or a thin spot, so you'll have a thick lip to a thick body, and then you'll have this really thin shoulder, and again, that's more likely where it's going to crack. So now I'm using my thumb to push in very gently and using the fingers to lift up. Again, don't focus on your imperfections, don't focus on your mistakes like that, but instead just keep going. Yeah, little things you can fix it, but not too much. Again, if you fuss with this too much, you're just going to piddle it to death, and that's always super sad. So very gently. So we went around the circle once, so let's do it again. This clay will slump. So that means the lip, whatever amount of lip you like to give to your piece, you got to give it a little bit more to compensate for the slumping. If you have something all the way out here, it's going to slump all the way down, just like kind of the differences between these two pieces, which is really nice. She had a little bit of a lip, but it's pretty much a flat piece of clay. This one has a nice little bit of lip. If you're like me, I enjoy a good juicy tomato and mayo sandwich, so I need a piece that has a little bit more lip to catch all the juices that may dribble off my plate. So I don't give it its form all at one go at the same time, but instead let's just do it a couple of times. Again, all the way around. Soft and slow and gentle. If you go too hard, too fast, that's when your piece will mess up or you'll lose your piece, and that's no fun. And generally in the second or third go around is when I like to fix those, anything that again still looks like a burr or a crumb. You always want your ceramics, is just best always clean, because you don't want people to get cut while using these. That's no fun. I've been cut on a lot of ceramics and porcelain, and it's just not good. So that's pretty good. And I kind of straighten out that lip a little bit. So yeah, that's a cute little sushi plate. Super quick. It probably spent a little bit. Sounds harder than it is, but if you don't have the form to use at home, it's just time and patience. Work on a piece of cardboard or something, and then lift the lip up a little bit. Let it sit outside a couple of minutes. Here in New Mexico, it'll dry up super fast, and you can gently fold up that lip. I like working again on these hot mold, slump mold, simple formers in these quick lessons, just because we don't have enough time for the clay to set up, because there's so much water in the clay. But this form will give it a resting place, and it'll help hold its shape while the water dehydrates. So I hope that was easy peasy. Thanks again for all your comments and questions and photos that you send. So keep sending us stuff you want to make. 1 pound sushi plate. Pretty quick and easy. And I hope you guys have a good afternoon.